In this presentation, we are going to review 22 federal and state violations of the Constitution of the United States in the government's response to COVID-19. Now, what's been really interesting for me as I've been researching this and going through the Constitution, studying it, and looking at all the hundreds of cases where we've seen violations of the Constitution. The first time I went through, I counted 17 violations, just 17. But then as I kept on reviewing more and more material, that number kept on going up and up and up until finally I have, well, at this point, just 22 violations of the Constitution. There are probably more, but that's what I was able to find, and that's what we're going to look at in this presentation. 101 slides is what I have in order for us to take a really close look at the Constitution and at the facts. Now, as I've talked to a lot of people about what's going on here in the United States and really throughout the world, so many people keep on complaining that the government is taking away our First Amendment rights. Well, that's not exactly true. No one can really take away your rights. Those rights are, in fact, unalienable. The Constitution says that your rights are unalienable. They are gifts from God. Also, this goes way beyond the First Amendment. The First Amendment rights. Yes, the government is infringing upon our First Amendment rights, but that is just the very beginning. There are dozens of other violations of the Constitution taking place here. Today's many violations of the Constitution of the United States are, in fact, innumerable. This has been going on for a long time, folks, for over 100 years. There are each day tens of thousands of violations of the Constitution in so many of the things that our federal and state governments do on a daily basis. And so really this is nothing new. This has been going on for a very long time. It's just that what we see happening today with all this COVID-19 nonsense suddenly is becoming so much more noticeable than it ever was before. So let's look at the Constitution of the United States. Let's read the preamble, which states, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." So that is the purpose for which the Constitution was ordained and established, that we might have prosperity, that we might enjoy the blessings of liberty, that we might have a generally good welfare, that we might have a adequate common defense, we might have domestic tranquility, justice. Now, if we see a lack of these things in our lives in this country, then it is because we are not following the Constitution that was given to us. It's that simple. Do we have prosperity right now? Do we have liberty? How is the general welfare? How is the tranquility? Is there justice today? Well, if the answer to any of those is no, then it's actually quite simple to discover the reason why we are not following the Constitution. Now let's take a quick look here. It's a little snapshot. One article posted on April 13th says that the coronavirus stay-at-home orders stir protests nationwide amid fears of economic collapse. Why do we have economic collapse? I thought that in this free country we were supposed to have prosperity. What's going on? Could it be that maybe the Constitution is not being followed? those founding fathers were pretty smart guys, and they knew exactly what we needed to do in order to have economic prosperity. And if we're not having economic prosperity, then guaranteed it's because we are not following the Constitution. It's very, very simple. Now, in the preamble, it states, "We, the people, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. The U.S. government receives its rights and powers from the people. The people receive their rights, powers, and privileges directly from God. The Constitution of the United States is the people's covenant, contract, and bylaws for the governance of the United States. The government of the United States receives its authority from the people by and through the Constitution. Inasmuch as the governors and presidents and mayors and all the government officials exceed their lawful authority as prescribed by the Constitution, then they are tyrants. It's that simple. They only have those powers which have been ordained to them by the Constitution. If they go beyond that, then they are illegal, and they have exceeded their lawful authority. And what they are doing is, in fact, tyranny. Now let's look at the Declaration of Independence. This is a lesson in Americanism 101. The Declaration states, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed." Now, we could talk about this paragraph for a very, very long time. But let's just look at the highlights. All men are created equal. It doesn't mean that we're all equal per se in terms of how good we are at things or how valuable we are to society. That's not the case at all. But we are equal under the law. Under the law, we all have equal rights. We all have equal justice. Also, we have certain unalienable rights. We are endowed by our Creator. We are endowed by God with unalienable rights. These are rights that cannot be taken away from us. They are inherent in our very being. These rights are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and many, many, many more. But all these rights are connected with the basic rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The proper role of government is to secure these rights. Governments are instituted among men to secure these rights. That is the proper role of government. The proper role of government is not to keep us safe. It is not to impose additional laws based on what they think are a good idea. Their role, the government's role, is to protect the fundamental rights of man. So, the proper role of government is to uphold and defend the fundamental rights of man. So many times I have seen in the last few weeks, the last few months, where we have presidents, governors, mayors, etc., who do not understand what their job is. They think that they're here to lord it over everybody, to declare emergencies, and to take power unto themselves, and to keep everybody somehow safe by imposing new rules and new laws that were never approved constitutionally, were never approved legislatively, and are in fact unconstitutional and illegal. So if you're a president, a governor, a mayor, legislator, judge, sheriff, policeman, military, elected or appointed official, your job very simply is to uphold and defend the fundamental rights of man. All right, let's get into the Constitution of the United States. Violation number 1, Article 1, Section 1, the very beginning. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. Did I read that right? It says all legislative powers herein granted are vested in the Congress. So how much room is left over for the executive or the president of the United States to pass new laws? None. Zero. How about the judiciary branch? Do they have the power to pass laws? Well, not according to the Constitution. And yet we see time and time again, I mean, this has been going on for a very, very long time, well over 100, 120 years. And before that, we have seen so many thousands of examples of presidents and judges using executive orders and case law to impose new laws on the people, taking power unto themselves. They are violating the Constitution, flagrantly violating the Constitution. It's not like these people have never read the document. They know they're violating this Constitution. We have a judge who states that governors' stay-at-home orders are unconstitutional. Cases won't hold up in court. Well, it depends on the court, but it's not like this is a secret. We have sitting judges who know that the executives, the president, the governors, do not have the constitutional authority to order people to stay at home. This is not a complicated principle here. You don't have to go and get a law degree or be a judge to understand this stuff. Here we have in Wisconsin, stay-at-home order is definition of tyranny. State Supreme Court justice suggests. And so we do have sitting judges who are coming out and stating that what these governors are doing is in fact tyranny. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional. He states, the people never consented to a single individual having that kind of power. Now, there's a reason why we have a legislative branch where we have dozens of men and women who gather together as legislators to discuss, to review, to look at the constitutionality of a proposed law, and to vote and to go through an extensive process to actually pass laws. That's how we have the legislative process. It was never intended that presidents, governors, or judges should have the power to pass laws. Now, it's interesting, going back to when the Constitution was first written, we had the Anti-Federalist Papers, and they talked about this. These were people that were actually against the Constitution because they said that, hey, we're going to have a runaway judiciary. We're going to have runaway executives because they're going to go ahead and they're going to defy Article 1, Section 1 and start passing laws. And the Madison and Hamilton and Jay, they said, oh, no, this won't happen. Well, it did happen eventually, and that's what we have going on today. Violation number 2, Article 1, Section 1 states, the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. And then in Article 1, Section 8, we have enumerated powers. There are 18 general welfare powers and 10 common defense powers. They're listed. They're enumerated. And then at the end it says, to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested in this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or office thereof. So Article 1, Section 8 specifies what powers the Congress shall have for two reasons: for the common defense and for the general welfare. And then those powers are enumerated, and then in the closing clause it says, now you can make whatever laws you need to, which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers. Now let's look at what Jefferson said about this. Jefferson said, Congress has not unlimited powers, but only those specifically enumerated. Congress has not unlimited powers, but only those specifically enumerated. Then James Madison in Federalist 45 stated, the powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Now let's look at this. A lot of people seem to think that we have this general welfare clause that allows the Congress to do basically whatever it wants. Such is not the case. We have within the Constitution enumerated powers. Let's take a look at what those actual enumerated powers are. They have powers to borrow money, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states, and it talks about what that actually means: to establish a uniform rule of naturalization, to coin money, regulate the value, fix standard weights and measures, provide for the punishment of counterfeiting, establish post office, post roads, to establish copyright and patent laws, constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, and to define and punish piracy and felonies committed on the high seas. So we have these general welfare enumerated powers. Then we have several common defense powers. We're not going to go into a lot of detail here, but those are the enumerated powers in the Constitution. Here they are side by side. We have general welfare powers, and then we also have common defense powers, and that is what the that is what the Congress is authorized to do. No more, no less. So, how are we doing with this? Do we have a Congress that is abiding by the limitations and the enumerated powers found within Article 1, Section 8? Well, let's take a look here. On March 23rd, 2020, we have an article, Coronavirus Stimulus Offered by House Financial Services Committee Creates New Digital Dollar. All right, what is going on here? Now Congress is looking at completely replacing the dollar with digital currency. Does the Constitution give them the power or the authority to completely get rid of tangible money and create a digital currency? Let's remember, if Congress can do whatever in their discretion can be done by money and will promote the general welfare, the government is no longer a limited one. See, that is the rationale that these people have. They say that we have this general welfare that allows the Congress to do whatever they think needs to be done for the general welfare. Well, that's not the case. The general welfare powers are few and defined. They are enumerated. If that's not the case, then the government is no longer a limited one. James Madison states in Federalist 41, for what purpose could the enumeration of particular powers be inserted? if these and all others were meant to be included in the preceding general power. In other words, what was the point of listing and enumerating those powers if they can just do anything they want anyway? Alexander Hamilton, Federalist number 83, states, "This specification of particulars evidently excludes all pretension to a general unlimited legislative authority, because an affirmative grant of special powers would be absurd as well as useless if a general authority was intended." In other words, again, why would they enumerate and list these powers if they just had the power to do whatever they wanted to anyway? I'll tell you what, reading these Federalist quotes are real tongue twisters sometimes. All right, James Madison again. "The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined." Let's look at violation number 3, Article 1, Section 9. "The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended, unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it." All right, let's take a look at what this writ of habeas corpus is. Everyone's always talking about how we have this grand right and privilege of habeas corpus, but very few people actually even know what habeas corpus even is. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus gives the people the right to demand a habeas corpus hearing anytime they feel they are being unlawfully detained or restricted by the authorities. Do we have any cases in this COVID-19 crisis of people being unlawfully detained or restricted by the authorities? Is that happening? Are they having fair trials in order to gain their freedom? Is that happening? Let's keep reading here. The words habeas corpus simply mean have the body. And these are the key words in an order from a court commanding the jailer or other officer having a prisoner in his custody to bring the person before the court. The purpose of such a writ was to determine whether or not an individual was being imprisoned at the whim of the king or his officer, the sheriff, without any formal charge or provision for a hearing. Habeas corpus, defined in this legal textbook, is a writ used to require that a detained person be brought before the court. The purpose of habeas review is to test the legality of the detention. So right now we have all these people under house arrest all across the country. Are we getting any habeas corpus review? Are we testing the legality of these detentions? Let's look at this a little bit closer. Habeas corpus is what's called an extraordinary remedy and is used to challenge the lawfulness of a person's confinement or restraint. Habeas corpus is essentially a command from a court with proper jurisdiction to anyone who has a person under confinement or under restraint. The writ of habeas corpus applies to all confinement that is applied without lawful right, or that is applied in an unapproved manner or degree. Importantly, the term confinement and restraint are interpreted broadly when talking about habeas corpus. So are we seeing this right of habeas corpus being exercised? A little bit, but largely we have millions and millions of our citizens being kept under house arrest who are being confined and restrained without in a way that's not lawful, and these confinements and restrictions are not being tested in the court. So why is it that we are not seeing more habeas corpus hearings taking place in order to test the legality of the confinement and restraint of all these millions of citizens throughout the country? Well, probably one of the main reasons is that the citizenry of the United States do not even know what habeas corpus is. Most people, unless you're an attorney or a judge, have no idea how to actually serve a writ of habeas corpus in order to have an unlawful confinement or restraint contested. Now, in the book The Making of America, Dr. W. Cleon Skousen talks at length about the writ of habeas corpus, where it comes from, and the history. I'm not going to take the time to read all that. I was going to originally go through and read that, but it just takes too much time. This video is already too long. But suffice it to say, it has always been considered a free man's inherent right to travel at large unless he had committed a crime. If you don't have the right to travel at large, then you are not a free man. It's that simple. You are a prisoner. You are in bondage. Skousen also talks about how it has been customary throughout the ages for kings or government officials to violate the liberties of their subjects without due process of law. You know, if you get a king or a government official that doesn't like something that someone's doing, or for whatever reasons they come up with, they'll just lock you up, and you have no way to get out of prison because they have ultimate power and authority over everybody. There was no writ of habeas corpus right in ancient times until the Magna Carta. So again, he talks about the translation "have the body," meaning the right to a speedy trial where loss of liberty is incurred. And we're going to go ahead and skip that brief history there. Let's just review a few quotes here, again, to kind of round out our discussion of habeas corpus. Alexander Hamilton, Federalist number 84, stated, "The practice of arbitrary imprisonments have been in all ages the favorite and most formidable instruments of tyranny." All these millions of people under house arrest are being repressed by tyrants. It's that simple. Here's a pretty strong quote from Thomas Jefferson. He states, "It astonishes me to find that so many of our countrymen should be contented to live under a system which leaves to their governors the power of taking from them the trial by jury in civil cases, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of commerce, the habeas corpus laws, and of yoking them with a standing army. This is a degeneracy in the principles of liberty to which I had given 4 centuries instead of 4 years." So do we have that going on today? Yes. Yes, we do. We do have the many cases of people's freedoms being taken away. The freedom of commerce. They shut down the economy. I mean, talk about complete despotism and tyranny. Again, Thomas Jefferson states, "The habeas corpus secures every man here, alien or citizen, against everything which is not law, whatever shape it may assume." So anytime we have something which is unlawful taking place, the right of habeas corpus is intended to be used in order for the citizens to regain the exercise of those rights. Winston Churchill has some pretty good stuff to say about this. He said, We must never cease to proclaim in fearless tones the great principles of freedom and the rights of man, which are the joint inheritance of the English-speaking world, and which, through Magna Carta, the Bill of Rights, the habeas corpus, trial by jury, and the English common law, find their most famous expression in the American Declaration of Independence. All right, so let's take a look at something going on here. DOJ wants emergency indefinite detention powers to hold Americans without due process. So here we have lawmakers, we have rulers, judges, lawyers pushing for indefinite detention powers to hold Americans without due process. I mean, talk about completely blatant violation of constitutional limitations and constitutionally protected rights of the people. This is going on right here, right now. People are pushing for this. So here's a quote from Paul C. Roberts. He said, speaking about terrorism, he says, Americans think their danger is terrorists. They don't understand that the terrorists cannot take away habeas corpus, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. The terrorists are not anything like the threat we face from our own government in the name of fighting terrorism. The American constitutional system is near to being overthrown. So that's Paul C. Roberts talking about terrorism. Similarly, I say Americans think their danger is COVID-19. They don't understand that the COVID-19 virus cannot take away habeas corpus, the Bill of Rights, or the U.S. Constitution. COVID-19 is not anything like the threat we face from our own government in the form of fighting this war on COVID-19. The American constitutional system is near to being overthrown. That is the threat we have today. It is massive. So, what can we do? Well, we could decide to take action. You can write your own writ of habeas corpus, or you can hire an attorney to write it for you, deliver the writ of habeas corpus to your local sheriff or courthouse. If you don't like being under house arrest or any of these limitations, that could be done. I'm not telling you to do that, but that's what the Constitution says you can do. All right, let's talk about violation number 4. Article 1, Section 9 states, no bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. That sounds pretty confusing. What's this bill of attainder stuff? Well, let's talk about that. The Congress shall pass no bill of attainder, declaring a person to be a criminal without a trial and conviction. This provision gives every American the right not to be declared an outlaw or a criminal by a legislative act, which was so often done in England and had been done to some extent in colonial America. So that's what we have going on right now with by to some degree by Congress allowing it, but mostly by our governors passing laws, executive orders, which essentially classify most of the citizenry as criminals. How? By convicting them to house arrest, saying you have to stay at home, all this social distancing stuff. Also, you have to wear a mask, treating everybody like they're all, disease-infested, people. These executive orders are completely illegal. They are de facto bills of attainder. That is unconstitutional. You're treating the citizens like they're criminals, putting them under house arrest, and imposing all kinds of restrictions, even passing laws through executive order which shut down businesses. People can't go to work. People are losing their livelihood. These are bills of attainder, completely unconstitutional, treasonous behavior. All right, Bill of Attainder laws of the United States. Let's look at some examples. Allegations of being a domestic terrorist. In other words, if you disagree with government, you are considered a domestic terrorist. That's a Bill of Attainder. We have red flag gun control laws. Anyone can come along and say, hey, I think that person is maybe dangerous, and all of a sudden, they are treated like criminals and have their Second Amendment rights stripped from them and even locked up. That's definitely Bill of Attainder law, unconstitutional. And then, of course, we have the government response to COVID-19. These are Bill of Attainder executive orders, which require social distancing, max occupancy rules, shelter-in-place rules, government lockdowns, forced quarantine of healthy citizens, shutting down the economy. These are mass bills of attainder passed by executive order, completely illegal, completely unconstitutional, treasonous acts, violating the Constitution. Bill of Attainder rules and laws strip citizens of their freedoms without being convicted of any crime. They strip citizens of their rights without being convicted of any crime. They strip citizens of their wealth and property without being convicted of any crime. They are the hallmark of despots and tyrants. So do we see citizens stripped of their freedoms, stripped of their rights, stripped of their wealth and property? Absolutely. Absolutely. This is going on right now. So here's a classic example I'm sure you've seen on the news. Texas Attorney General jailing salon owner. A shameful abuse. Here's a lady that's just trying to go to work to feed her family and thrown in jail because she has violated the governor's order to close certain businesses that are considered non-essential. Well, that is a bill of attainder against all those citizens who have businesses that have been shut down. Of course, we have the barber that got his license taken away from him. These people are basically saying, hey, I have no choice but to oppose these executive orders. We have no choice. We have to be able to provide for ourselves. We have to be able to work, make money. All right. Violation number 5, Article 2, Section 1. Before the president enters on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So this is a oath that the president, the governors, elected officials all take in one way or another to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Now, it's interesting in this current COVID-19 crisis, President Trump has actually had very minimal violation of the Constitution. And what he's done, he's made recommendations. He did declare a national emergency. I don't think he understood really the extent of what he was doing in that action. It didn't really quite click with him until later what was really taking place. It was too late then. But most of these violations of the Constitution have been done at the state level. The governors of most of the states have, to a very, very extreme extent, violated their oaths of office to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. I tell you that the pits of hell will be brimming with the souls of men and women who were in government, who have violated the Constitution and have violated the rights of those that they were called upon to govern. Violation number 6, Article 6 simply states the senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Again, all these government officials all have to take oaths or affirmations to support the Constitution, to abide by the rules and limitations imposed by the Constitution that are imposed by ultimately by the people upon them. Violation number 7, Article 3, Section 3 states, treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same act, to the same overt act, or on confession in open court. So treason, it is treason to adhere to their enemies. Enemies of what? The Constitution. It's treason to violate the Constitution of the United States if you are a government official, especially an elected official. Pretty extreme stuff. This is the Constitution, not me. That's what the Constitution says. Violation number 8, Article 4, Section 2. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. In other words, as you travel from state to state, you have the freedom to come and go as you will. You have the same freedoms wherever you go in each of the states. Well, not exactly. Each states have their own laws for sure. But just because you're from Alabama doesn't mean you're going to be a lesser citizen in Louisiana. Everyone gets to enjoy constitutionally protected rights no matter where they are in the United States. This is an interesting little example here. Herbert issues travel declaration order. So the governor of Utah passes an executive order to control who can come into Utah. They have to go online and fill out a questionnaire, and he's not going to let you enter the state if you have a bit of a temperature or maybe you had a bit of a cold. That is not granting all citizens of the United States equal status under the law. Also, going back to that, Article 4, Section 2, it's interesting how red states and blue states do not provide equal constitutional liberties. We still have a lot of states under extreme lockdown. Everyone has to wear a mask. Everyone has to stay at home. All kinds of crazy things going on. Then we have other states where the rights of the citizens are being gradually returned. The privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states are not being equally honored or guaranteed, not at all. This provision is definitely being violated. All right, violation number 9, Article 4, Section 4 states, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. Now, wait just a second. I thought we were supposed to have a democracy here, right? That's what everyone always talks about. We need to spread democracy. No, the Constitution does not ever even mention the word democracy. Article 4, Section 4 states the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. What is that? What is a republican form of government? Is a republican form of government the same thing as anarchy or aristocracy or communism or federalism or feudalism? We have all these different forms of government. What kind of government are we supposed to have? We're supposed to have a republican form of government. If we have any other type of government besides a republican form of government, that is unconstitutional. Any form of socialism is unconstitutional. Any kind of military dictatorship, martial law, is expressly unconstitutional. Federalism is unconstitutional. Communism is unconstitutional. Totalitarian government is expressly unconstitutional. We are supposed to have a republican form of government as defined by the Constitution of the United States. Unfortunately, today, our federal and state governments look more like a combination of communism, democracy, federalism, feudalism, military dictatorships, oligarchy, socialism, anti-theocracy, totalitarianism. I mean, it's anything but republicanism in the United States. This has been going on for a long time, actually, long before COVID-19. Here's an article, May 7th, 2020. Do we still have a constitution? In this article, it talks about how the government does not have the right to infringe upon personal freedoms, no matter the emergency or pandemic. So there's no clause in the Constitution that says, hey, if there's a pandemic coming along here, or we're afraid of some disease, then the government or the governors have the right to cancel all constitutional rights, all civil liberties, and lock everything down. There is no constitutional provision for that. The government does not have the authority to lock everybody down, put them under house arrest, and to shut down the economy. That is expressly unconstitutional. That is not a republican form of government. So again, the United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a republican form of government. It's interesting that in the Pledge of Allegiance, we pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. How many people have been violating their pledge to the Republic of the United States? That's the same as pledging your allegiance to the Constitution. We go out there and we pledge allegiance all the time, and it's just words. Nobody really understands them or has any kind of real allegiance. Well, very few people have any kind of integrity towards that pledge at all. Now, I've written up here characteristics of a constitutional republic as constituted within the Constitution of the United States. If you have a constitutional republic, you will have the rule of constitutional law, not the rule of men. You'll have a limited government whose powers are few and defined. There will be a separation of powers between the executive, legislative, and judiciary branches. A national government which respects the sovereignty and rights of regional and local governments, namely states, counties, municipalities. A national government with sufficient power to maintain the rule of constitutional law, guarantee to all citizens equality under the law, and to protect the sovereignty, rights, and liberties of all state and local governments and of all the people. Constitutional protections are in place to protect the rights and liberties of the people in the form of ex post facto restrictions, habeas corpus requirements, bill of attainder prohibition, bill of rights, free market requirements, military limitations and regulations, etc. These are what constitute a Republican form of government. Take any of these things away, and suddenly you do not have a Republican form of government. What do you have? Some sort of dictatorship or oligarchy, totalitarianism, despotism, tyranny. Again, a republic is not communism, democracy, federalism, feudalism, military dictatorship, oligarchy, socialism, or anti-theocracy, totalitarianism. But this is exactly what we currently have. Here's an interesting news article video showing an Idaho woman taken in handcuffs faces up to 6 months in jail for taking her kids to the playground. Is this a Republican form of government where women who take their kids to the playground get hauled off in handcuffs because they have had the audacity to defy a dictator's executive order? You're not allowed to violate social distancing limitations. It's just complete tyranny. That was in Idaho. Governor Little in Idaho. What a guy. All right. Our government's response to COVID-19 is simply an exercise to condition the people to just shut up and do what they are told. It is an exercise to condition the people for more government control under the welfare, warfare, surveillance, and totalitarian state. That's what this is all about. What the government is doing in this COVID-19 crisis has absolutely nothing to do with the virus. Nothing to do whatsoever. This is all about conditioning the people for totalitarian government. It's changing the culture, getting rid of the old normal, establishing a new normal where everybody just simply accepts governmental tyranny and totalitarianism under a welfare, warfare, surveillance, and totalitarian state. Unfortunately, most people in the United States are far too ignorant and stupid to be able to recognize that this is what's going on. They simply believe whatever they see in the news. They simply swallow hook, line, and sinker whatever they're told by their despotic government officials. Pathetic. While we are at it, let's just be clear. This is not a COVID-19 crisis. This is not a pandemic crisis. This is a civil liberties crisis. Our crashed economy was not caused by COVID-19. Not at all. Our crashed economy was caused by our morally bankrupt and completely corrupt totalitarian government. That's why we have a economic crisis, because we also have a civil liberties crisis, because we also have an ignorance crisis. 99.9% of the people in the United States are completely ignorant of all these constitutional provisions which are supposed to be protecting their liberty. All right, let's get on with it here. Violation number 10, Article 6. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So, if a state decides to put an amendment or a provision in their state constitution that is contrary to the U.S. Constitution, those provisions, those amendments are null and void, because the Constitution is and shall be the supreme law of the land. We have a lot of laws on the books that are completely unconstitutional and are, according to Article 6, null and void. Good luck with that. All right, so again, this Constitution shall be the supreme law of the land. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land. In other words, any law that Congress passes is also the supreme law of the land, inasmuch as it is in pursuance of the Constitution. If it's constitutional, if it's unconstitutional, then it's not. It's interesting. I was going through kind of the timeline of this whole COVID-19 crisis here, everything that our government and governors were doing as this supposed pandemic has been unfolding. And it was interesting to me going through and studying all these measures. A lot of these state governors started closing things down, closing down the schools, closing down businesses, closing down restaurants, closing down their economies when they only had just a few cases of COVID-19 in their states. They were almost all the governors were just so eager to hop on the bandwagon, declare states of emergency, start shutting everything down when there was just still very, very little going on, just a few cases of COVID-19. They just, I'm not going to take the time to read through all these things, but to me it was just astonishing looking at the timeline of these events and the violations of the Constitution that took place at the state level, when really the actual effects of COVID-19 were extremely marginal. Let's move on here. Violation number 10, Article 6 states, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So here we go. The judges, the judiciary folks are not going to like me saying this, but hey, it's right there in Article 6. Case law and civil law do not trump the Constitution. I don't care what any judge says, what rulings they've made, anything that is in violation of the Constitution is not law. Simply isn't. Here's an interesting little news article here. It says this is really happening. Montana County demands citizens wear government-issued armbands to shop at grocery stores. Update: Valley County health officials respond. They apologize. And so, yeah, for a while there, you had to wear an armband just to go grocery shopping. Really? Where did these government officials think they had the authority to demand something like that? Absolutely ridiculous. Just insanity here. All right, violation number 10, Article 6. And all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. So some people think, oh, the government can pass treaties or can pass new laws simply by signing a treaty. Well, that's not the case. Not at all. Treaties all have to be signed and in conformity with the Constitution. All treaties must be made in harmony with the Constitution of the United States in order to be made under the authority of the United States. Otherwise, a treaty is not constitutional, is not legal, and is not binding. So we have all these international health organizations, etc. Any kind of treaty or agreement we have with those are not binding. If it violates the Constitution, if it violates the sovereignty of the United States, then it is simply not binding. All right, so we've got several violations. Obviously, we're going to talk about having to do with the First Amendment. Let's just go ahead and read the First Amendment to start off with. It states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. All right. Violation number 11, Amendment 1. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Not going to spend a lot of time with this, but we all know most people haven't been allowed to go to church for quite a while here. Here's a news article. Mississippi police raid church drive-in service, issue $500 tickets to entire congregation. Wow. Violation number 12, Amendment 1. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Okay, here we go. Facebook CEO confirmed that the post would be banned to ABC's George Stephanopoulos on account of on a segment of Good Morning America. Anyway, Facebook CEO says that, hey, if anything is deemed misinformation or whatever, it could be removed from Facebook. And so we have all kinds of things being removed from Facebook, from YouTube, all kinds of censoring taking place, things that counter the official government message about COVID-19. Violation number 13, Amendment 1, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of the press. So again, same thing. We have a lot of censorship going on here, where the freedom of the press is being abridged, is being violated. Violation 14, Congress shall make no law abridging the right of the people to peaceably assemble. Well, that's obviously going on with all of our executive orders, de facto laws that state that you can't have more than 10 people assemble anywhere. Businesses being closed, restaurants being closed, churches being closed. This is a fundamental right being violated, the right to peaceably assemble. California suspends First Amendment rights in response to protests, so now you can't even protest. That's interesting. Violation 15, Amendment 1, Congress shall make no law abridging the right of the people to petition the government for redress of grievances. Okay, so we have a problem there in Maryland, where we have a protester who was 21-year-old Duncan Socrates Lemp, who was shot by a SWAT team at 4:30 in the morning in his home. And then his parents were threatened with jail for protesting his killing. You can look that up. Violation number 16, Amendment 2, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So we all have the right to keep and bear arms. One of the first things that the governor of Virginia did was sign a new batch of gun control bills into law when all this hit the fan. Somehow we're going to be more safe from COVID-19 with more gun control. Absolutely insane. Violations number 17, Amendment 4, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Again, we've got protesters that are being illegally searched and in some cases even killed in this COVID-19 business. And they're trying to lock that down even more. We have mobile phones to track and trace coronavirus. You can download the app and It's supposed to be some huge effort to be able to trace COVID-19. That's what they say. It's interesting. Every time we have would-be tyrants try to impose some new government measure, it's always for some altruistic reason. They want to do something for the good of the people. It's always complete BS. They're simply lying to you. They say, "Oh, this is for your good." No, they want to be able to track and trace everybody. That's their way of being able to control everybody. Violation 18, Amendment 5, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Okay, that's pretty point blank, guys. Pretty point blank. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property. Are we being deprived of liberty? You bet we are. Property, definitely. All these millions of Americans that have been locked up in their homes under house arrest, all this lockdown, and then people being stripped of their properties, stripped of their livelihoods because of that, all without due process of law. This is a flagrant violation of Article 5 of the Constitution. Here's an interesting article. Coronavirus pandemic creates a new criminal class in America. Among them are fathers playing t-ball with their kids, people who have weddings with too many people going through to drive-in churches, all kinds of stuff going on here. Also, we got travel papers that are required if you're, and if you work at some essential business, you got to be able to prove that you're a required essential worker and have travel papers. What is this, Nazi Germany? It's absolutely crazy. Violation 19, Amendment 8. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. As you can tell, I'm getting a little bit tired here, reading through violation after violation of the Constitution. This is getting pretty old here, tiring me out. But yeah, excessive fines, cruel and unusual punishment. If this isn't cruel and unusual punishment to put everybody under lockdown, to strip people of their livelihoods, to strip people of their constitutional rights, you can't even go to the beach. If that's not cruel and unusual, I don't know what is. A flagrant violation of Amendment 8. Violation number 20, Amendment 9, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So we have in the Constitution the enumeration of certain rights, but Amendment 9 is saying, look, we have not supplied a comprehensive list of rights. And just because it's not listed here doesn't mean that the people don't have these other unlisted rights. For instance, the right to still be able to go about one's business even when there's a pandemic at hand. The right for people to peaceably assemble even when there's a pandemic at hand. The right for people to exercise all these constitutionally protected rights, and also rights that are not listed in the Constitution. These don't go away just because there's been a state of emergency declared. Violation number 21, Amendment 10. The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So we have a very specific, concise, finite list of powers delegated to the government, to the federal government, and to the states. And the amendment is simply saying that unless it's been specifically enumerated to the federal government or the state government, those rights, those powers are reserved to the people. Of course, we have all kinds of powers that the federal and mostly state governments are taking unto themselves completely unconstitutionally, in complete disregard to Amendment 10 of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Another interesting article, CDC, NIH, Big Pharma, Big Medicine, AAP, AMA, etc. Bill Gates' plan to abolish the informed consent ethical principle and vaccinate everybody. So with this whole COVID-19 business, they want to force vaccines on everybody. There's no constitutional provision to force vaccines on anybody. That is completely anti-freedom, anti-republicanism, anti-constitutional. All right, here we go. Violation number 22. Last one, Amendment 14, Section 1. This was passed in 1868. States, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. All right, Amendment 14, Section 1. This is very, very clear, emphatical evidence that all these executive orders by all these state governors are pure tyranny. They are unconstitutional. No state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. What is due process? Well, if you're going to pass a law, it has to be passed by Congress. It has to be passed by the legislature. It has to be constitutional. That's due process. Equal protection of the laws. Why is it that some people get to go to work and other people don't? Again, all these governors, like Governor Kelly in Kansas and all these other governors, they are tyrants. They are violating the U.S. Constitution of the United States. Here we have brave man, Maine's Franklin County Sheriff Scott Nichols says this is not Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia. He has a strong message that says those governments who issue stay-at-home orders with threats of police punishment if not followed. Sheriff Nichols issued a statement on the Franklin County Facebook page saying in no uncertain terms he will not follow the unconstitutional order. Quote, we will not be setting up a police state, period. He wrote, the sheriff's office will not purposefully go out and stop vehicles because they are on the road or stop and ask why people are out and about. To do so puts our officers at risk. This is not Nazi Germany nor Soviet Russia where you are asked for your papers. The sheriff's announcement comes as a welcome sign to Americans who have been arrested for insane things like praying outside, surfing, or trying to drive to work. Someone has to stand up to the unconstitutional directives that are being handed down daily by government officials, and it will fall on the sheriffs to uphold what they know to be their legal and lawful duties, none of which involve trampling the rights of citizens. So hopefully we can get some more people like Sheriff Nichols out there. All right, so in conclusion, just looking at the preamble again, this is supposed to be a government by the people, ordained to establish prosperity, liberty, general welfare, defense, tranquility, justice. If we lose these constitutional measures, these constitutionally protected rights, then it's obvious, we're already seeing it, we're not going to have prosperity, we're not going to have liberty or welfare or tranquility or justice. We just aren't. It's interesting, we just celebrated the sacrifices of our forefathers, those who've gone before, who have paid the ultimate price for our freedom. But I ask you, how many of our fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters, husbands and wives, sons and daughters, have given their lives as a price for freedom? Is it therefore too much to ask to perhaps risk the lives of some of our citizens in the face of this novel virus as the price to be paid for the preservation of our freedoms and constitutional rights? When we so willingly surrender freedom for security and sacrifice our fundamental rights to the subjugation of autocracy and tyrants, we dishonor and defile the sacrifices of those who have given so very much for our freedom and for the constitutional republic of these United States of America. Let me reiterate, the correct response to COVID-19 has nothing to do with physical science. It has everything to do with political science, constitutional law, and the proper rule of government. Everyone keeps on talking about, well, the experts are saying we're going to have millions of people die from this coronavirus, or hundreds of thousands of people will die, and so we have to do these things. No, we don't. Absolutely not. It is better to die for freedom than to live in bondage under tyranny just for a little security and a little supposed safety. Far better. The government has no constitutional authority to impose all these shutdowns and lockdowns. It is not the proper role of government to do so. Our rulers need to stop eagerly looking for alleged justifications and opportunities to disregard the Constitution, thereby taking more power unto themselves. Their job is to abide by the provisions and restrictions enumerated within the Constitution. If they cannot do this, then they are unfit for office. Finally, constitutional law must necessarily be the continual vocation and study of every free man if he expects to remain free. Man cannot be ignorant and free. Such a thing never was and never shall be.